And they look wonderful, but you're supposed to have the ink. Yes, usually it's a phone.
Yep.
I get those and I just get ready.
So good evening, everyone. We'll get started at 5. I'm sure other folks will come walk in, and that's fine. My name is Mitch Stone. I'm the Director of Community and Economic Development. For those of you that don't know me, I have kind of taken over in the town perspective of this project right now. As many of you may know that Rob Yerxa is leaving the town, and want everyone to understand that there's been a lot of work done by Rob Yerxa on this whole corridor for a long time. So a lot of the information here is thanks to the work that he has done and worked with folks. So I want to welcome everybody. I think it's exciting to have the opportunity to have all you folks here and to have an opportunity to talk about a major piece of our town and the main thoroughway right through our community. So tonight, we're gonna talk a little bit, give a little presentation of, but also we want to hear from you. We want to hear what your concerns are, want to talk about this corridor. And before we get going, before I turn it over to Nikki, I'm gonna have everybody introduce themselves up here, and then we can move forward.
All right, I'll start off. My name is Jacob Stein. I'm a transportation planner for the Bangor area metropolitan planning organization. My role here is to kind of help be in the loop so that further down the road as this project progresses, I can help with more public outreach and interact with you guys and make sure the information gets shared around.
Nikki Conant, Director of Transportation Engineering at Sebago Technics. We are the hired consultant for the planning study commissioned by the town.
Claire Winter, I'm an urban planner with MaineDOT, and my role in this project is project manager for MaineDOT. So I'm here to kind of help assist as needed and find any technical resources at MaineDOT.
Jared Pangolette, I'm the transportation planner for Regions 4 and 5 and the tribal liaison with the department, and here to provide assistance to Claire and team here.
So a bulk of this time is going to be listening to you. So I know that Nikki has provided, set up a PowerPoint little presentation to kind of give some ideas around and kind of get people thinking about the corridor. And then we're gonna open it up to questions and comments around the corridor and what your concerns are with this corridor. So I'm gonna turn that over to Nikki and we'll go from there.
Great, so hopefully everyone should have a good view of one of the screens. Mitch already kind of opened up things. We did introductions, so this is what we're looking to go through as part of my presentation. I want to keep this super short and sweet so we can spend more time hearing from you all. We're going to talk briefly about project history, the proposed scope and process for the project, which includes our purpose and need statement. I'm going to talk about some kind of design considerations just to prompt conversation, and then we'll move on to you all. So the planning study encompasses a really long portion of Route 2, basically from Kelly Road all the way to the Old Town line, which spans a total of 3.25 miles. For those of you that are aware of some of the efforts that have gone on this corridor in the past, Sebago has actually been involved in both a pedestrian safety study on Main Street in recent years, as well as a downtown study. A Park Street study was also completed, as well as MaineDOT spent some time with the corridor identifying specific safety improvements. So the corridor over the years has been really well studied and looked at, and this planning effort is looking to kind of marry all of that together. So that ended up in our resulting purpose and need statement, which is here. We develop a purpose and need statement to set our intention for the study, the theme of what we're trying to do moving forward. So I'll just quickly read it for everyone. This study aims to reevaluate and build on the studies of previous years, expanding implementation to a comprehensive corridor improvement effort. With the residential, commercial, and institutional uses accessed via Main Street and Park Street, coupled with the arterial nature of Route 2 to neighboring communities, these efforts aim to mitigate vehicular traffic impacts during school peak hours, improve existing safety deficiencies, and build new infrastructure for pedestrian, bicycle, and transit connectivity through the corridor. Encouraging the historic village nature of the downtown and creating gateway considerations through these improvements embraces long-term vitalization by emphasizing safe and efficient movement for both residents and visitors. So what I want to kind of hear from everyone tonight, one of the things that we often talk about when we're looking at corridor improvements is the complete streets policy. And so what this is a approach looking at multiple facets of a corridor, the vehicular, the pedestrian, the bicycles, all those things are kind of in play. So what we really want to hear from you all tonight is, what are your priorities when it comes to those items? Is it moving vehicles from one place to the next? Is it building sidewalk infrastructure, on-street parking, new bicycle facilities? Is it green space? Is it street trees? Is it things of that nature? Or is it traffic calming, speed reduction approaches? And so when we talk about vehicular mobility, some of the things that we talk about are traffic signals, roundabouts and intersection improvements, and turn lanes. So if that's a particular focus, we can talk about some of the things like that and some of the concerns that may lead to some of these options as solutions. Another portion of vehicular mobility that we often talk about is access management. And what access management is the consideration for driveways and how they come onto the main roadway. And so I always like to use this diagram that you see on the right. It's a really good example of what access management means. So if you think about a parcel that has multiple driveways or a really wide driveway, this is creating multiple conflict points between vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles. But when you move to the option on the right and kind of consolidate things, you're taking away a lot of those conflict points. So that's something that I wanted to just quickly define as a term that we often use. Pedestrian accommodations, sidewalks, a big thing that we always look to strive for is complying with Americans with Disabilities Act, which includes, you can see the photo on the bottom, the detectable warning panels. And then it also includes things like if we implement rapid rectangular flashing beacons, which is the picture on the left, which are the signs that when you basically hit the button, they're going to flash up so that you can cross the crosswalk. These will have what we call audible tactile buttons. So they have both the braille and like the raised surface as well as the locator tone to accommodate everyone who's using them. On-street parking is another option, just a picture of some on-street parking and some considerations as to what we have to keep in mind if we're looking at situations where we want on-street parking, distances from crosswalks, intersections, and things of that nature. Options for timed parking, loading zones, all those things are kind of in play. And then bicycle facilities. Do we find that it's important along this corridor to have dedicated bike lanes for bike use, shared lanes, which is the picture in the center, and then just appropriate signage where necessary. And then I also noted traffic calming, so things like median islands at crosswalks to provide refuge, reduce travelway widths or curb extensions. You can see on the picture in the right, this crosswalk, for example, has an extension of the curb to shorten the crosswalk across the main road. This location also has the RFBs that I just talked about, as well as these raised bollards that provide a vertical kind of notification to the crosswalk location. And then streetscaping as well. So lighting, street trees, benches, planters, this is all kind of in play as a part of the conversation today. Are there priorities as it pertains to those items as well? Like I said, wanted to keep that super brief just to kind of prompt some ideas and thoughts, but really the focus of this effort is to hear from you all, the users of this corridor on a day-to-day basis. So feel free to take any piece of what we just talked about and elaborate on it and specific to how it applies to what you'd like to see for our planning efforts moving forward. And then I'd like to pass it off real quick to MaineDOT to just talk about process moving forward.
So do process now or? Yeah,
That's fine, just so that they can understand where we are and.
so this program is through our community-based initiatives, which was a program developed under Commissioner Van Note, which has 4 subsets in it. And this particular program is called the Village Partnership Initiative. And with the Village Partnership Initiative, we look to partner with municipalities to make transformative investments in your what's determined as being the historic village core or downtown. And we don't tell the municipality, the community, what that is. It's really for the community to tell us where you want your corridor to be. And so Orono does have a fairly long corridor, pretty much from Kelly Road to the Old Town line. And in that, we look at several factors such as traffic safety, but the guise of this really is under pedestrian and non-motorized transportation safety and accessibility, and looking at ways that we can improve on transportation equity by adding more options for transportation within a historic village. And so Nikki shows you a lot of the features that we consider implementing. And what we do is we've got a multi-step process. The first is a feasibility and conceptual design phase, which is where we're at now. And then we will go to preliminary engineering, which there's a match structure for how that is cost shared with DOT and the municipality for the planning phase and the conceptual design. And then there is a match structure for the preliminary engineering. And then we will then, with that, the goal is we will apply for a RAISE grant, which RAISE comes from USDOT. It's part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, where for every $1 that the municipality invests in infrastructure improvements, DOT will invest $1 and we will invest $8 of federal money. So it's an 80-10-10. This is I would say, once in a generation opportunity for many rural Maine towns to make transformative multi-generational improvements in infrastructure upgrades, and then looking at how we can have an infrastructure that will be sustainable and durable for multi-generations and serve like the future, I'd say, trends and directions in transportation, which is really moving away from a car-centric version of transportation to a multimodal, providing opportunities for bicyclists, for safe walking. If I had my way, there'd be a skateboard lane everywhere. And to also ensuring that pedestrian safety is prioritized, as well as ensuring that we have a ADA compliant transportation system to reduce barriers to mobility. That's the 10,000 level view, but basically it's a 3-step process: planning, preliminary engineering, go for a RAISE grant, and it's based on municipal partnerships. And I'm going to get the first question right out of the gate. People often say, why doesn't the DOT just do it all yourself? It's your infrastructure. You should be doing it. Totally right. And we're more than happy to consider doing that. However, the speed that we work and the timeframes that we have, we can really prioritize this and make things more expedient if we have a municipality that's equally vested in a process with us. And that's what this is right now, the process of public engagement. And this is your time to provide us your feedback, comments. And what I do say to municipalities is now is the time to really dream big, think big, and wait to be told no later on, because you are not going to get everything that's on the wish list. However, the more you have, I think the more likely the possibility of getting as much as you want. And this is really that time. So I see some, kids this is for you and for you and for you and everybody else. This is really a chance to have not only a safe and efficient transportation system within Orono, but we can also consider the aesthetics. This is about placemaking, and we use this as a part of the toolbox in economic revitalization for towns and city centers in the state of Maine. And it's been successful in Hollowell, Belgrade, Sanford is now going to construction. This is a very good program, and we're excited to be partnering with the municipality in this process.
So from this study and this evening, the idea is to collect as much information as we can and have Sebago go back and hear all this and come up with some solutions. And then we'll come back probably in June-ish with some more public meetings that have renderings so that you can see some ideas of what maybe could happen and there can be some more input at that time. I think the next step here is to open it up to comments, concerns, ideas around the corridor and trying to do that in some structured way. So what I would like, and probably what we'll do is take a few comments here, then I'll ask Pete if there's anyone online, because we are doing this to see if we can get those and kind of go back and forth. Raise your hand, maybe your name, where you live, and then we'll just start that process. Yes, Rob, wait 1 second. Yes, Rob.
You want me to hand these out now, or do you want to wait?
You can. We also left some cards, so if somebody doesn't want to raise their hand and say it, that's fine. You can write it down and give it to us, and then we can add it to it. Also, you see up here, Route 2 project@orono.org. You can email that, anything you want, and it goes to us, and we can make sure that that is part of the discussion as well, as we go through all the information. So. Would you like- he actually had his hand up first, so.
Should I stand up and talk so that everybody can hear me?
As long as you talk loud enough, they can hear you here and everybody can hear you. If we don't, we'll just say a little loud.
Kevin McKegg, I live on Bannock Road, about a mile down towards Old Town. And I don't know if this is a question or just an observation as a layperson. When I think about changing roads and adding bike lanes and all that, the first thing that comes to mind is the available space and you know, it just seems like, well, there's no more room. Where are we gonna put all this stuff? And I imagine that there are a lot of things you're gonna tell us that about how to work with that. Are we talking about, you know, cutting into somebody's front yard or moving a building back, or is it just about repurposing what's there?
Yeah, so that's all what we're doing as a part of this feasibility analysis is exactly what you said, trying to figure out what fits and what makes the most sense. And so we'll certainly have more answers regarding that at the next public meeting.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay, I'm Bob Close. I live in the Basin community along the river. Two words that you said I really resonate to. One is big.
Speak up a little bit.
Can't hear you.
I don't have one of those Baptist preachers, but maybe that's why my students don't listen to me. Bob Close, Basin community, Orono. Two words this gentleman said that resonated with me. One was big, the other was aesthetics. Those of you who've lived here for a while, think back a few decades when Mill Street and the village center were draped with power lines. Now there are no power lines. Appreciate the sky. Why can't we continue along the corridor and underground the power lines? It can be done. Other communities do it. 3 miles is not that long to do this. When I've mentioned this before, people have said it's very expensive. Is it less expensive to send out crews every time the power goes out and import crews from Massachusetts and New Hampshire to help us? It's got to cost a fortune. On Main Street, facing that way on the left, there was a pole in the middle of the sidewalk. No ADA access in that case. This would go to aesthetics, okay? They can be undergrounded. Other communities do it. That's the first part of my comment. The second one is, we don't really have bike lanes. We have a painted white stripe, which designates where people park and throw their garbage, okay? I think, Kevin, right? Yeah, but Kevin was talking, there are people who measure the width of these streets and they can engineer room for everybody. But the bike lanes must be dedicated bike lanes, maybe raised a little, maybe paved with a slightly different color. That also goes to aesthetics and it goes to utility and it goes towards, I believe, slowing things down. If a place is beautiful, I think people want to move more slowly through it. That's my speech.
Can I just say one thing quickly regarding utilities? We cannot use the federal transportation funds to underground utilities. We can consider relocating or alternate locations for utilities if they are can demonstrate the transportation need for it, for ADA compliance and safety. Aside from that, though, this funding cannot be used for undergrounding utilities. Municipalities, more than we can find other sources of funding for it, but under this program, that goes beyond what we can spend the transportation funds on. I want to make sure that I get that out of the way. First, in other towns, it's come up. You're not the first and only town that's had this question. And I want to make sure that the public knows this is for the transportation system and transportation safety and mobility specifically.
So we'll take one more. Matt, I'll get you, because you, go ahead.
My name's Matt Powers. I live on Main Street. I'm at 179 Main Street. And we have a wonderful police department. If we wanted to, we could have them sitting out and just giving traffic tickets like 24/7 on Main Street, other streets too, but I know Main Street. And so one of the things that, and my kids they walk to school all the time. They have to cross the street. There's only one crosswalk from Kelly Road till the school. And so all the communities, all the way from Kelly Road until you get to West Forest, there is not a single crosswalk on Main Street. And I would love to slow traffic down by having more crosswalks and have them raised up, just like we're doing on Forest Avenue, because that forces people to go the speed limit. And the other thing is I like to think big, so I would love to see a protected bike lane and road diet to slow all that traffic down. That's me. I want my kids to be safe. I want them to be able to ride their bikes on Main Street, which I don't allow them to do right now because people drive way too fast.
So I'm gonna see if there's somebody online right now. Pete, is there anyone online with a hand raised?
No hands raised at this time online.
Okay, go. Yep, Fiona.
Hi, Fiona Sorensen. I live down on Beach Street, and I bike around town and I walk sometimes, although I usually bike. And I'd just like to say, and I think it might be helpful for people to know, that I was involved with the previous study on Zoom, and we were looking at Kelly Road to the bridge. And a lot of the stuff that just got said, we looked at, and you had great solutions. More sidewalks, thought a lot about where the sidewalks should be so that people were walking, not too far on one side of the road, the kids could cross. We were making sure that the sidewalk for the kids was adequate and they weren't walking into telephone poles, nor were people who were riding along the bike lane riding into telephone poles and utility poles. And creatively, a solution was found to have at least one good bike lane that whole distance. Is that right? I think we have one good one and one most of the way, by moving the center line, by moving cars around, and there were bump outs for the crossings to narrow the lanes, not raised, but just narrowed. So, I guess what I'd love to see that just going all the way out of town.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly note the efforts that we worked together on a couple of years ago were more financially constrained. And so it's important for you to say, hey, if that budget isn't in place, thinking big, like what are the next steps for you? So thank you.
Is any of that information accessible online someplace?
I don't believe it is right now, but we'll put it on that same page that everything's. Okay.
Yes. Yep, sure. Okay. Yeah, I guess Noah Charney, I live on 26 University Place. I guess two areas of comments. First, like I appreciate what you're doing and like the potential to envision a transformation of the downtown. So I walk just like from the University Place over to the kids' school every day. And I guess in terms of aesthetics, like I've lived in other towns, like New England towns with that like town green and like the quiet village there and like the center of the community where we can have a gathering and have like a cultural, like we have a wonderful community, but not necessarily a great centering location. And if there's some way to transform that would be great. Right now, it feels like it's mainly like a trucking corridor, like heavy traffic, really loud. Like, I don't know if there's potential to move those things somewhere else and make this beautiful like paradise in the middle of the intersection there. Do that, it'd be great. But yeah, so I would be all for those sorts of green spaces and quieter, like pedestrian friendly center. Now, the other comment, so that may not be possible. would be just safety, echoing Matt's concern. You know, we walk from University Place to, I, for the last 2 years, walked sort of every day the kids at school. I've been hit by a car once with the kids and seen three other kids almost hit at the crosswalks, like screeching brakes, like very close calls with kids walking themselves. The sight lines on the crosswalks at that main intersection, any way you go, or at the drives coming out, like where Tyler Technologies is now, like those, they're just terrible sight lines and terrible people speeding and looking this way and then turning, and just, it's a nightmare. And I just seems like a matter of time to me before something really bad happens. So every day it's like a nightmare to me, sort of that safety aspect. And so anything we can do with the raised sidewalks, the changing the layout, the people carrying orange flags or something I've seen in towns where they like pick them up and walk across the street. That is.
Yes.
Dave Llewellyn, 104 Main Street. I like your suggestion, Matt. My chuckle was that speed bump on Forest Ave will take the bottom out of your tree. I like your presentation very much.
Thank you.
Been thorough. Looked at several ways to alleviate the situation that we have. We have a mess, really. It seems like thousands of cars every hour. The other way too. So it makes a real problem for us to enter the traffic during these rush periods, to turn to go either way, really. If I have an appointment at Old Town, I've got to spend 5 more minutes in my planning of getting to the appointment. So it's not going to get better, it's going to get worse. Because if we restrict the widths, fewer cars will be able to pass easily through this whole zone. If we don't restrict, somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get hit with somebody opening a door if they're parking on the side of the lane. If the commuter bus is stopping to pick up or drop people off, people are going to zoom around. We got to take those things into account. Our sidewalks are in horrendous shape. They're subject to puddling and ice, and so they need replacement. And it's going to be difficult because we do have underground buried utilities, especially the gas lines. So we can't really impact those if they need to maintain them. So it's a big problem. We have a large bicycle group, and they use the roads usually after hours, after the rush hour, but everybody, Matt's kids, they want to ride their bicycles in the daytime. So they've got to be taken into consideration. And then finally, the lighting is, I would say, inadequate for pedestrians during the winter time especially. So that's my input for now, but I'd be glad to, give more input as time goes by.
Thank you.
Jacob Baker, I live over on Winter Haven, and 2 things. I work in Bangor and I will often take the bus. And I know we've got 1 designated bus stop, but perhaps the downtown area having several. That way the bus can get off the street, because he was right. Either the bus stops and cars stop during rush hour behind him, or they whiz by it. So having a couple of designated bus stops. But then when I do drive to work, the intersection by the school is terrible at going to and coming back from times. I can cut 10 minutes off of my commute to Bangor during the summertime because the school traffic isn't there. So it seems there's something better to do at that intersection as well.
Just to clarify, are you referring to Westwood Drive or Goodrich?
Yes.
Westwood,
Yeah.
okay.
My name is Debbie Averill. I live at 265 Main Street on the corner of Page Place. And I guess I would first of all like to say that everybody's talking about rush hour, which used to be 7:30 to 8 and 4:30 to 5, and is now 7 to 10. And about 3:30 to 6:30, as far as I can tell, trying to get out of Page Place. We have a much longer period of time because I think we have much more flexible hours and things. So I think, you know, that concept is one that needs to be a little bit expanded. I would also say that one of the things I think we need to maintain that we've had before is an understanding that having drive-through businesses and things would not, that come onto Main Street would not be a good idea for Orono. So, you know, a takeout place or whatever where people drive through. Because even with the addition of the roundabout up on Park Street, the folks that are coming out of all of those things, particularly the drive-through coffee place, is kind of a nightmare. Because you have to watch so many places along the way. You know, I've lived here long enough to remember that there was supposed to be a bike path in Orono on Main Street. That line was supposed to be a bike path. But in noticing your information there about decreasing the number of access points onto a street, I'm not sure how you would do that in Orono, since many of them are private homes. But, and to keep, it said something about keeping parking places 20 or 25 feet away from something else. I don't see how you do that on Main Street with the number of access points that come on to the street. So, I mean, I think we have a lot of challenges, and then we have a lot of places like by Woodman's where you have some very strange traffic patterns coming in. Really strange traffic patterns. And so maybe, I mean, I'm not a designer, but maybe some out of the box thinking about redesigning some of those things. While still maintaining the fact that our business district is off to the right. You know, I think people in downtown have lost some business when there was a drive-through coffee place up by the university. So those are just some things I think you need to take into consideration.
I think the 20-foot thing that you mentioned, is it how far parking has to be away from a crosswalk? Is that, yeah.
Yes.
They wouldn't be, it's just a matter of how far you have to, how far away from a crosswalk you have to stop parking, so the sight lines are better for kids and people crossing and all of that, so that cars can see you and you can see the cars.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure whether that necessarily impacts what you're thinking about in terms of closing them, but yeah.
And also at the top of Pine Street Hill, I've noticed, because I come up that way a lot. When the light goes green there for the crosswalk is also when people can turn right on red. And so that's very dangerous for kids because they're coming across there thinking they have a green light. And they do have a green light, but people who are turning right on red think they can go. So, you know, just some, you know, maybe no turn on right.
Same thing in the middle.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jeanette Landis. I live out on Page Place. It's a mile that way. My husband and I are both regular bicycle commuters and would love to see dedicated bike lane and more people biking. And I think the real reason more people don't bike is they don't feel safe. Because you have to take the traffic lane, you have everybody speeding. Feels like people are going way too fast. So anything you can do to calm traffic and get more people biking and walking, I think would make it more pleasant for everybody.
You get less school traffic.
Yes. If all the kids rode their bike instead of getting a ride to school, that would solve a lot of problems.
Yes.
I'm Nancy Presk. I live on University Place, which is a U-shaped street off of College Avenue, right next to Murray's repair shop. I was here back in the 60s as a student, and I remember when students lived on campus, which meant that there were a lot fewer cars, there were a lot more people walking, and there was a lot more of a community sense on that side of town. I didn't own my house at that time. But I also was involved in Sculpture Symposium, and I've been involved in the comp plan here. And each of those projects, I've pitched it. Let's talk to the university. Because when Orchard Trails was put in, then that was this huge mass of students that leave campus. But then that means that they're driving their cars or walking. And then we've added at least 2, maybe 3 other large complexes, which has made the intersection now where Tyler is an amazing bottleneck when people are trying to either get home from an athletic event, people that drive to campus are trying to come down College Avenue and make that left-hand turn. And I have heard some rumors that that could become a roundabout. So I've spent some time, and I think Noah has too, we're neighbors, walking in that area and trying to envision how traffic flow would be. And yesterday was a perfect example. I was actually in my car and there was a flagman letting some utility work being done at Tyler. And when the flagman stopped traffic, people on Route 2 didn't stop. So I sat through 3 light cycles as the second car coming out of College Avenue. And we sat through those light cycles because there was no one stopping the people that were coming down Route 2. So I envisioned then, so what would it look like if it was a roundabout? There would be no one stopping those cars coming from that direction, coming from the Old Town direction. And then you'd have the other half of the people coming from a hockey game. Some would have gone up through campus and come down Route 2, and others would have come College Avenue. And so they would be sitting like I was. And the other thing I noticed in living on University Place is that if I'm coming from campus on a busy evening or day, and I make a right-hand turn into the closest to the university entrance to college or to University Place, I make a right-hand turn and suddenly I've pulled all the cars behind me because they think I know a shortcut. And I get to my driveway and I can't get in because I can't back in my driveway because I've got this chain of cars. And we are having conversations, and Rob Yerkes has been amazing with this. We're having conversations about making our streets safe for children to play on. And Noah's children are 2 of those children. And when the university lets out an event and somebody decides to take University Place, suddenly we've got this stream of fast cars. So if we could, as y'all as planners and us as community members, coordinate conversations with the university so that it's not just there's enough of a road cut for these new housing complexes, but that there are somehow patterns built in that would enable, and then where there are traffic lights, enable those traffic lights to match the traffic flow at that point. 4:30 every weekday is another really busy time. It's not so difficult in the morning because people come at different times. But I'll make my pitch for the 3rd time to talk with the university. And I think we would find the willingness there also, because I'm sure they hear it from a student. And thank you for making tonight possible. Really appreciate it.
Looks, there was a hand up online, but it looks like it's gone down. So, yes, go ahead.
My name is Al Larson. I live out on Outer Forest Avenue, so I drive into town enough to know the problems. And I would just wonder if there's some way that the police department can really substantially step up taking care of speeders. We live on Forest Avenue. It's like the Bahn Highway in Germany or something. People go through there 70, 80 miles an hour, and it's all the time. And I know they speed down Main Street, the Route 2 corridor. But I'd like to see the police really step up and stop people from speeding. So that Orono would get the reputation that there's not a place where you should be speeding. When I go through VZ,
I was just gonna say what you're gonna say.
VZ has a reputation that you should not speed through there. And I know when I go through there, I'll set my speedometer thing at 35 miles an hour, the speed limit. And so I know I'm protected that way. But I don't want to be paying a whole lot of speeding tickets. But if people in Orono and the students or whoever is traveling through here could just understand and Orono could have the reputation, don't speed. Because that kind of comes back to the police department and they've got a lot of things they need to do, but maybe they need to hire 2 or 3 people for traffic control or something, but it would be time well spent and it might take a couple of 3 years to get that reputation. But if Orono could work on that and just, it would slow traffic down and make it safe for a lot of people.
Yes, Lori.
I'm Lori Osher. I live on Mayo Street. And I'm sorry, I missed a little bit of the beginning of this, so maybe people have said this already, but there's plenty of studies that show that when the paint lines are painted narrower, that people go slower. And so when sounds like there was already work done to figure out what would be ideal. And then the response to what Fiona said, that all this work was done in planning Zoom meetings, was that it was too much money. It does not cost a lot of money to paint lines that are narrower. When people drive on lanes that appear narrower to them, they go slower. And that seems like that would be a low cost way to start. And I also would love to see us have an actual guarded bike lane that would have some barriers so that even people who are not paying attention to how narrow the lanes are would hit the barriers before they would hit our kids. I rode with my kids, one on the front, one on the back, when they were tiny, all the way to the sharing place. And I continued to do that, but it was dangerous then, and 20 years later, it's still dangerous. And I was on the council for years, and I kept talking about this and nothing got done. And so I'm really glad to see that you're having a discussion about it. And I don't know what kind of money is coming in for this, but I know that you paint every year. And so they call it tactical urbanism. New York City did it before they ever took away out lanes. They painted out lanes and then put up barriers and picnic tables, and so people would eat outside in places that used to be lanes, and they realized that the traffic slowed and there was more pedestrian activity. It was better for local businesses because more pedestrian activity is better for business. And the people who complain that they don't have a place to park, they park somewhere and then they walk to the businesses, and the net result is that it's a more walkable community, and actually it's better for the business. It's not better for the people who want to speed through our town and get somewhere quickly. But we live here and we're not going to change if there's 10,000 cars that go through our town every day. But we can change the rate at which they go, and they might choose to carpool or go somewhere else.
On that note, excuse me, does it have to be painted to look like a highway? I mean, are there ways to make it looks like a highway? So I think that kind of encourages people to go fast.
So I just want to follow up on that. Tactical urbanism, municipality on your local roads and choose to do to a certain degree whatever is your interest and budget allows. That is US and State Route 2. There is a mobility corridor priority to it. And we have to comply. Everything that we do within this study must comply with the state highway design guidelines and then the federal manual of uniform traffic control devices. There are things that we can and cannot do with regards to lane widths and with regards to what types of paints, treatments. There's a lot of regulations that have to be navigated before we can make those decisions. That being said, new guidance is coming out where we can, in certain conditions, reduce lane widths. However, I think there are other alternatives too that can provide, along with reducing lane widths through this feasibility study and conceptual design programming, additional pedestrian and bicyclist safety implementations that would also expand upon reducing lane widths. And so that's where I think at the end of this process, you're gonna see a very robust set of conceptual renderings come out that has a lot of, I'd say, you're gonna see some really nice plans, sections, perspectives, that have a lot of proven, what we call them, proven safety countermeasures, which are a set of, research-based and case study-based interventions provided by Federal Highway that we're asked to use when making those changes. So we're both really excited about tactical urbanism, but we have to do things within the framework of federal and state policy. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is James Garrity. I live at 109 Main Street. My family has lived in that home since 1964. So we've seen Orono and the traffic in Orono change over the years. And it's certainly concerning for me now. My question or concern is any plans initially or in the future to expand any portion of this corridor, especially through the historic district, residential district, as the distance from the sidewalk to the front of my home, which is built in 1829, is only 30 feet. And any encroachment or expansion or eminent domain certainly concerns myself, and I'm sure property owners on Main Street that live in these historic homes and are concerned about eminent domain as it pertains to an aesthetic improvement or any other improvement in that corridor.
So everything that is done in this study is proposed within the existing right of way. And we at the Department of Transportation are not really in the business of acquiring property unless it's demonstrated as necessary and there's no other feasible alternative. We do our best to kind of get rid of excess property. So it's what you see will be proposed within existing right of way unless there's no other feasible alternative. But I don't really see that at this point, but.
Yep. My name is Brian McGill. I live over in Webster Park neighborhood on Peter Street. 3 quick comments. Bike lanes, the ones we have now are actually, I think, more dangerous than not having them. There are places where they narrow down to literally narrower than the width of my pedals. And yet drivers think I have a bike lane. So I think bike lanes is a huge problem. A lot of people in this town bike. Crosswalks, I'm certainly all for enforcing speeding. But talk about a scofflaw, crosswalks. I've sat, at a cross street waiting to pull out, watching somebody who actually has dared to step into one side of the crosswalk and 40 cars speed by in the other half of the crosswalk while somebody's already in the crosswalk on Route 2. So I know that's probably as much a police enforcement problem as it is, but crosswalks nobody in this town respects crosswalks. I bike regularly over on University Ave. That crosswalk is just a joke. But the crosswalks downtown, I think, concern me the most, and a complete scofflaw. I've even contacted the police and volunteered to be, a sting person who steps into the street. And I've never seen somebody pulled over for going through a crosswalk, and it happens all the time. The last thing, really kind of struck by Noah's vision of the town green. This may go into the scope of not in the money, but maybe the town does it at the same time. But there's a property right across the street that's empty, and it's a now. But we put that together with a smarter use of the space right in front of here. And I think that could be a really nice, appealing green space in the center of town that would attract a lot of people and attract a lot of people to the businesses that are adjacent to it. So it's probably not a DOT thing, but I know the town's probably going to be spending money at the same time the DOT does. And I would encourage the town to think about that.
So we do have somebody online. Pete, do you want to elevate them to speak?
Hi everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. It's Pip Hansen here. I live at 2 University Place. We've lived in Orono for about 8 years now. And echoing what Nancy said, what Noah said, for me, something that's really, really important is making that corridor safe for kids. My son is desperate to be able to bike to school by himself. And at the moment, there's just no way I'm going to let him. It is not safe. The pavements aren't safe. People drive too fast. No one respects the crosswalks. I had so many problems when he was a baby trying to get across the road to take a walk in Webster Park with him because people just wouldn't stop. And I had a giant bright green running stroller with flashing lights on it, and people just still would not stop. And so I am so fearful about even letting him walk to school without an adult with him, let alone riding a bike. And that's not what I pictured from my son's childhood. We moved out of a big city to a smaller town so that he could have the same things that my husband and I had growing up, which was the freedom and safety to be able to ride your bike and go out with your friends and know that people are watching out for you and it's safe, and that you can go about being a kid without having to worry about what the adults around you are doing or not doing. So I would love to see crosswalks with either the flashing lights or more enforcement. And I know that the PD does an incredible job. They have a lot of work that they need to do, and sometimes enforcement is just not there, and then they get ragged on if they do enforce. But I don't know, as a town, we need to band together and make it safer for our kids.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, I'm Sarah Marks. I live at 4 Beer Street, also on Webster side. I think just to follow up with what was just said, for me also, my top priority would be safety, especially for kids, but for all of us. And I've heard a few things brought up that connect to the things I wanted to say. The intersection where you can cross at a light from the UCU to Taqueritas, that intersection is a super high priority for me on the crosswalk. When you push the button and it tells you to walk, you walk, and at the same time, not a right turn, they get a left turn arrow. And they're coming around a crazy corner off of Forest and Bennett, so they're not even facing toward the crosswalk. So they can't even tell you're in it until they're halfway around into the intersection. So if you're going fast at all, they slam on brakes to try to stop. But of all the intersections in the center, that's the one that scares me the most. I thought of it when my kids were small. What surprised me was I was recently at a meeting on campus with college students and asking them, as a town councilor, what kind of things do you want to see fixed in town? And one of the things they flagged was that intersection. They said at nighttime, we cross when the light goes and it's dark and people come at us around the corner. So I think for all ages, that intersection is really important to look at. And the other one is, I always forget the name of the street. Someone here can help me, but the street that comes by Methodist Church and then by Marsh Island Brewery out to Main Street. What is that called? Oh, there you go. On Oak Street. There's, there are walls around the dumpsters in that parking lot. And kids, especially when they are riding bikes in town, more often than not are riding on the sidewalk down that hill, which I've been told is legal and they're allowed to ride on the sidewalk. But because of the placement of those walls around the dumpster, the cars are inching their way out to try to see around the dumpster, and they could maybe see the road, but they can't see the sidewalk in time. So both of my kids were actually hit there, both of them at that exact intersection biking home. And then I recently met another family whose child was actually hit there on a bike. So that's an intersection where I would really want us to take a look at, I don't know who owns those walls around the dumpsters, but how we work with whoever owns them to get them relocated in some way that intersection is safe. And then the third thing is someone else in my neighborhood sent an email and wanted me, they couldn't be here, to just bring up what folks have already mentioned, but the roundabout ideas and where they might go and what they might solve, but also what problems they might cause. I don't know, but this person flagged the North Main and Main Street intersection, which people have brought up. You could wait there forever if you're trying to make a left turn. I generally go right and go up around the roundabout and back down. But they're worried with Tyler Technologies going in, how much more traffic might be coming out of there at certain times of day and how much worse that intersection might get. And they also mentioned the one folks have talked about with College Ave and Park Street and Maine coming together where the Murray's garage is, asked if that's being considered for a roundabout. They also asked if it was possible to purchase it right away through the old Murray's, if that's up for sale, and make a 4-way intersection there as opposed to the 3-way thing we have now. So I'm just throwing that out for this individual area who cannot be here tonight. Thanks.
Yep, go ahead.
Yep, Susan Elias, I'm at 31 Water Street down in the Tough End. I started the meeting on Zoom and I think I heard most comments. So hi, if I'm being redundant, I apologize, but someone mentioned the strangeness of that intersection. The Woodman's intersection, and coming out of the Tough End, you drive up Pine Street to the light. Someone mentioned the problems turning right, turning left. I have had cars come through. They're not aware that I have a green light. So I've learned to be really careful. For some reason, they're not seeing, wherever they're coming from, they're not seeing that they have a red light. So it's right in front of the Irving is what I'm talking about. And then someone must have mentioned the number of people going the wrong way on Mill Street. You know, and you're trying to go into Mill Street. So that's another interesting facet. My question is, how much trouble do the speed tables cause plows? Because I really like the ones that have gone in on Forest Ave. I think they're really helpful.
Rob. Design, following the standard DOT designs, you don't present all that much of an issue with plowing. There's drainage concerns and all that kind of thing that you have to take into account. But for the most part, yes, they're an obstruction in plowing and they're not, you gotta work with them, but they're not prohibited.
Thank you.
It looks like we might have another one online, Pete.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hi, my name is Avinash Day. Please ignore the ant wash. That's a reference from Lord of the Rings. My name is Avinash Day. I live on 38 Pierce Street. I would like to talk about 4 trailer parks that we have in Orono. None of them have public transportation. Bus does not serve them. And 3 of them are not served by any sidewalks, so they really cannot walk safely to downtown. So as we are talking about Main Street and Route 2, I would like to talk about how we can also consider many people who are low income have to use sidewalks, are not served by the city or BACTS transportation, and have to solely rely on cars. So please keep them in mind. I know personally a few people who are at in very tricky domestic situations where they rely on their partners who and they cannot really walk to downtown. So please keep them in mind as you think about improvements to Route 2. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm John McCormick. I live on a side street off College Avenue, just 5 blocks beyond the Elk Pond. Just to echo the comments I've heard earlier. The average speed limit between Stillwater Village and the steam plant parking lot, this is going by eye, but gotta be 45 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone. I've seen the police out there once in a blue moon giving tickets out, and as this gentleman said, you don't drive that fast in VZ because you know you're gonna get a ticket. So why can't we do that? We have 6 police cars out in the back. Send them down there and start giving tickets out, and that might slow the traffic down. I don't know. Okay. Second and last comment. I saw something the council put on a ways back, couple months, maybe a year or year and a half-ish. About some company that was willing to give the town some scooters. Is that ringing any bells with councilors? They were gonna, like the Old Town has those scooters that people can use and ride on the scooter and then leave it, and the company or somebody else will pick it up. Is Old Town still, is Orono still considering that? Number 1, and number 2, really? Scooters? Like they had them in Paris. They were all over the place.
So the town did enter into a pilot with them last year. And that would come up again this year to see if we would move forward with that company or look at other companies. We're also looking at other alternatives, whether it's bike rentals or things like that too, so.
Thanks, Mitch.
Yep. Eric.
My name is Eric De Silva, I live in the Webster Park neighborhood. And I was also on an earlier planning with the corridor that goes from the bridge out to Kelly Road with Fiona. And that's a great design. I'm excited for that and more to be released. One of the things that doesn't often work is just using paint to slow traffic down. We really need like vertical delineations. We need physical choke points to slow traffic. Paint wears down, it wears off. Paint also creates like a really wide boulevard, like College Avenue. So if you have really nice bike lanes and sidewalks and a proper travel lane width, then you end up with this very wide boulevard that in itself kind of encourages people to feel more confident traveling at faster speeds. So vertical delineations, choke points, whether they're curb extensions or maybe bollards. Maybe bollards are put out every April and taken down every November to make plowing more easy. But then during the height of our season, when most people are walking and biking, those bollards are there to really separate traffic from where automobiles are going to where the bike lane is. It makes the people on the sidewalk feel more comfortable too. Sidewalks, right now we have sidewalks that are like over like on Main Street. There's some places where there's a telephone pole in the sidewalk and maybe there's like 2 feet. There's no way it's ADA accessible. Sidewalks, if they're near a curb, ideally we're looking at a 6 foot wide sidewalk. And bike lanes, if they're near a curb, should be 5 feet wide. If we really can do it, let's get a green corridor to separate the sidewalk wherever possible. So down by Webster Park, that used to be a sidewalk right against the road. And when it got rebuilt, now that sidewalk's separated by a nice swath of grass, it feels really comfortable to walk there. It's not only safer, but it's encouraging more people to use that infrastructure, which if we can encourage more people to bike and to walk, then we reduce all the traffic that is in cars and trucks. A lot of these people are traveling like from their house to 2 miles to the university. Definitely walkable, absolutely bikeable. If we can do that, then we don't need expensive roundabouts potentially. There's one more thing I wrote here, right? 3 more, sorry. So the bridge over Stillwater. The bridge is a great example of uncomfortable walking. Yeah, there's a sidewalk there. There's sort of a lane for bikes to go and none of it's ideal. On a day like today, you get a truck going past you and you're like, I'm ruling myself on the sidewalk. I'm like tough, I'm grit. Because you get spray, it's not pleasant. But even on a day where it's sunny, you got a lot of traffic and they're going 35 miles an hour, 4 feet away from you, 3 feet away from you. I don't let my own kids go on that sidewalk on the bridge. So when I'm with my children, like on the shoulder, I mean, I don't let them go on the shoulder. That means I'm on the sidewalk with them. And then if you encounter someone walking, it's just not enough width there to accommodate everyone safely and comfortably. If I'm trying to get over to the other side from Webster side, sometimes we'll go under the bridge. There's a little connection of grass and rocks that goes underneath the bridge from Webster Park over to where the new business facility is being built. I don't see that as something that everyone's going to be able to do. But it's fun, we love it. So I think we need crosswalks throughout the entire corridor that we can label as priority crosswalks. So maybe there's some sort of coding, or maybe it's a vote that goes through, but which ones do we want to prioritize? And then those should receive special treatment. They should all have rapid flashing beacons and they should be raised so that we really make sure that motorists are aware that this is a crosswalk. They're looking for people waiting to cross and they're being respectful of that. And then the other big one, which hasn't come up surprisingly, is Irving. So Nicole, you called it something to do with the curb cut there. What was that called?
Access management.
Access management, really uncomfortable at the Irving station. A lot of people are walking, a lot of children on their way to school. That's a dangerous section. A lot of people are just not even aware that there's a sidewalk there. They're not looking for pedestrians. There's no bike lane at all. There's not even a shoulder in that point. Yeah. But if we can do something to make the access management better where the Irving station is, so that pedestrians and bicyclists are actually given more fair treatment and it's safer. I think that would be a great improvement.
We do have somebody online, so we'll go there and then go ahead, Pete. Go ahead, you're all set. I think you might be muted.
Hi, I'm Nadine Jones. I'm from 12 Hamlin Street in Orono. And it really makes me happy to hear so many people with concerns in Orono and the traffic and people walking. All of your issues are so important. I'm listening to people. And since I was born in 1954, I've heard them all over and over again. My biggest concern is I cannot go up Hamlin Street from the corner to the main street because of those darn trucks. They get up to the hill and then they go really fast down it. And several times I almost was hit by one, and I'm thinking there's no traffic, and I turned right or I turned left, and then all of a sudden a truck is in my face. So that's my biggest concern, but I solved it. I went up Island Avenue. I went down Hamlin and up to Island Avenue and solved it. I think in Orono, to solve a lot of the problems could be speed bumps. Like, we could have a speed bump at the end of the hill on Main Street between Hamlin and just down from Hamlin. I think that we could have speed bumps other places. I just went to Belize to visit my son, and they have speed bumps all over the place. And what was great, they were working. I mean, they have less police because they can't afford it, but the speed bumps really took care of the people in their little village because trucks and cars had to be slowed down. So I hope you will consider, the speed bumps for Orono. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jacob again, I know you said,
go ahead.
I know you said you're gonna stay within the current confines of the street. If you need to go right up to James and Melissa's doorstep, by all means. You don't touch the rest of the main street.
I know what
No, but one of the things I love about our main street is all of the big, old, mature trees. And so I would hope that any design doesn't touch them or minimizes any impact to the old tree growth we have up and down the historic part of Main Street.
Lisa?
I'm gonna stand up because I'm so little. Fiona, Eric, the Peerless Rob, and I were all members of the previous committee that worked on the Main Street corridor. And since Fiona and Eric have already spoken, you can see that we were not stupid people. We worked very hard, and we had previously had pedestrian safety meetings sponsored by the Bicycle Coalition of Maine. And so we heard a lot of the safety arguments that people have made here tonight, and we tried to take them into account. And speaking as a thrifty old Yankee, we paid a hunk of cash for that study, and a lot of it went to you people at Sebago Technics, just saying. And so I hope you will put our study up on the web so people can take a look at it, and we don't have to start from scratch, because we haven't addressed everything that people have said tonight, but we've addressed a lot of it, like that intersection at Westwood, which makes everybody crazy. The other thing I want to say, which we haven't talked about at all, is the other side of the bridge. The Park Street part of this traffic corridor. And the other document I hope people will be mindful of was a plan that Mr. Rickert was still our planner. Mr. Rickert and Kyle came up with a very nice plan to try and reduce the kind of commercial sprawl feeling that you get up there by the local and, you know, in back of Talmar Wood. And so there are some features there that I think you could incorporate into a better plan to slow traffic down on Park Street, where, well, nobody ever stops when you push the pedestrian crossing flashers, which I know from sad experience. We have a problem in Orono is that the downhill part of Main Street is sort of a pre-industrial Main Street that kind of got hijacked and is now the main traffic corridor for the university. So our plan aimed at several things at once. First, we need to get people out of their cars. There are too many cars. We can't reduce greenhouse emissions if we can't get you out of your cars. Second, once people get in cars, they turn into these feral, monomaniacal beings. And they can't think about anything except getting wherever they're going 2 seconds faster. And most of them are just going to the university where they could walk. We have 2 buses. One of them free and the other one free with your university ID card. They go to the university. Or they could ride a bike. Or they could carpool. And for the nice lady who says we should talk to the university, good luck with that. But, you know, I would do a little more than talk. I would try and get the university serious to live up to its green university commitments and get more of its students to get out of their cars. I mean, they're living behind Thriftway and they're getting in their cars and they're driving to campus, please. So there's a lot that we've already done. We have a lot of consensus. I look forward to this process going forward.
Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah, thank you. My name's John Quinn. I live 107 Mill Street. Also am a frequent walker to the Asa Adams now and bike commuter to Sharing Place still until they're both in the same school anyway. And yeah, biking around that corner, particularly across the bridge, particularly around that College Ave intersection is like pretty scary and something I do kind of speedily and with my fingers crossed. So would love to see like that proper bike infrastructure in place and ideally like protected lanes wherever we possibly can. Or at least, you know, protected or separated lanes wherever possible. I think more sidewalks and particularly with the bump outs is really powerful at slowing down traffic when you're like suspension and tires are on the line. And I guess some questions, 2 questions that I had. One was just kind of about sidewalks and like, is 2 sidewalks part of the standards? Or is that just a response to a lack of, you know, having a sidewalk on each side? Is that a response to a lack of crosswalks to kind of get across the street to the good sidewalk? Or is that a standard that is in place when we're kind of thinking about like how much room there is for these things? And was also wondering, I understand that utilities can't be paid for by this project, but how does that partnership work? You know, where we build the beautiful vision of what this could be, and then the utility company comes in and puts a telephone pole in the middle of it. Like, is there protections in place to like, once this work is done that, because I think I'm also very familiar with the telephone pole on Main Street in the middle of the sidewalk. And I actually think it's 2 now. I think they switched the lines, left the old pole, and now there's 2 telephone poles side by side of the sidewalk. So what's that partnership with the utilities look like to
match the vision of the project? So when we go to the next steps, part of the preliminary engineering process has a historical and environmental review, utilities coordination, and then the pre-engineering where we get things fairly well designed to be able to build it. So there is that component of it, and I mentioned a big part of this project too is phasing in with planned utility upgrades within downtown Orono. Things that we do cover regarding utilities is stormwater drainage. We can deal with some stormwater drainage. The goal of this project too is to have a comprehensive plan in place that takes into account all of the moving parts with regards to planned highway maintenance to the corridor through downtown, to sewage and water upgrades. So there's a lot of pieces and moving parts that get accounted for within this process. It's very comprehensive, it's very robust, and a lot of consultant does have to do a lot of work, as well as referencing past plans. So it's not, we don't just start from scratch. All of the previous work has been building towards this, which I know it seems very arduous and long. Why do we have to go through such a process to get to built? That's just the world we live in, and where we are talking about potentially tens of millions of dollars, we have to make sure we're doing a robust, thorough planning process with public participation and engagement, hearing from all the stakeholders, and then meeting metrics per what USDOT needs, MaineDOT, so that we don't just come up with something, that's just us saying thou shalt have a roundabout. It's saying this is feasible, this is based on what we can do based on federal, state law, environmental constraints, financial resources and availability, as well as participation with the public, so that we have a lasting investment in the transportation system. Because people get really mad when we go in and build something and then 2 years later we come back, rip it out and do it again. This is a one and done that's actually effective, and like I've said, we've done this in other municipalities where it's been very successful. And part of going through this process is MaineDOT has a near perfect track record with USDOT in applying for these federal discretionary grants. And we want to maintain that relationship so that we can keep delivering, build projects for the traveling public in the great state of Maine.
A little bit of a follow-up. We've talked a lot about what the Orono town people want as far as getting downtown or getting to the university, with their sidewalks, bike lanes, etc. What we haven't talked about is any requirements that DOT would have regarding the amount of traffic that we have presently, the projected amount of traffic, and how do we get it through that corridor in a timely manner? I mean, if we keep slowing them down and stopping them, yeah, it may be really safe, but they're not going to get to church on time. So that's one issue. The other thing that hasn't been addressed really and talked about is the downtown here with the fire department, the police department, the emergency services, and the intersection with Bennick. At times, Bennick becomes just a pain in the butt because one person can block the yield, and it's aggravating. Not that it's unsafe, because it can be safe, but you block the yield, and then people can't get onto Forest. We've got a better situation than we had, but it ain't perfect. I'll let it.
So part of the scope, we do have the consultant doing traffic modeling and projections based on 2045 traffic count projections from MaineDOT, as well as forming with manual of uniform traffic control, the federal regulations on what we can and cannot do regarding lane width, signage, geometry. And we had BACTS out this summer, I actually joined you for doing some turning movement and traffic counts with their fun. If you ever see like a camera way up on a pole, stuck to a telephone pole and some people in flashy yellow vests, it's those folks. They're out there doing we love you doing the grunt work. And all of that is based on the data that is available and the data that we collect in real time, as well as prior to starting this study. I would say almost a year ago, I was working with some folks in safety, getting modeling for signal timing and turning movements for specific signalized intersections and intersections that may at some point, but yet don't right now, have a warrant for a signalized intersection. So there's a lot of data that goes in, which is why I'm so glad the consultants do all the heavy lifting.
I think also to add to that real quick, what Jared just said as well, and I've heard others echo it as well tonight. Like, I think that's a big part of this study is we'll look at this data, we'll have the consultant look at this data. But really, like, I think you saw it in the presentation, there's a lot of different things we have to consider, and you all have to consider as a community that we're balancing here. And, there's constraints and there's needs that we have with mobility. But like, we can't just probably build a giant speed bump going through the entire corridor. So what does that look like, balancing those different desires of the community in different areas? So that's really what we're gonna be looking at as part of this.
You go ahead.
Hi, Nancy Larson. I live on Outer Forest Avenue. I heard Eric talk about the Irving Station, which really brought to mind, that is a large piece of our downtown and right near the school, right near our public safety area. Will you be able to negotiate somehow with them? If they were just being built today, I would envision that there would be some sort of zoning that they had to put in some green space. They had to put in some safety area. It's really not safe going in and out of there. It's a really problematic area, and I hadn't thought about it until Eric brought it up. But it could have great potential for being improved. The other thing is on Mill Street, the sidewalks, right after they were put in and sort of ADA accessible, were not. And I'm concerned that we all think that this is going to happen, but they really need to be accessible to all ages, all mobility, in order to be ADA, and there certainly weren't when they were put in. And the other thing is I'm hearing a lot of concerns right now about the lights and crosswalks and children. And I wonder if there could be a subgroup of you who would work on that problem before somebody gets hurt. It's really scary. And driving around town, when you take a right-hand turn off Pine Street onto Main Street, the light telling people they can walk goes at the same time you're turning right. You have a green light to turn right. So things like that could be improved a little more quickly, I think. And it sounds like they're a big concern.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Ben Hale, I live on Elm Street. I'd like to echo pretty much what everybody has said. I think it's important to have improved crosswalks, raised crosswalks, signals, a dedicated bike lane. One thing that I would really like to kind of stress, and it seems like this is happening, is that this is continuous throughout the entire corridor. I'm thinking about Route 2 State Street in Bangor, where they've done some improvements, where there's new crosswalks with bump outs, signals. They put in a bike lane, but it's just paints and it's like half a mile long. And I could see some spots where it might be awkward and complicated at the bridge or right here in downtown, which I would echo is a mess in terms of traffic and pedestrians going through. But it might be something where you say, well, we can get a bike lane most of the way, but there's these 2 or 3 spots that we couldn't make it happen. Once you have one spot where it's disconnected, it really kind of breaks it all down, right? You want to have something that throughout town, people could use as a bike lane throughout town, clear, safe pedestrian ways. So making sure that it's connected throughout is important.
Hi, my name is Sydney Record. I live in the University Place Loop off of College Ave. And as a mom of these 2 kids, I have kind of 2 things highest on my mind. One is that they live to be older, right? So I just want to echo that if you're prioritizing different situations, I think the lives of our townspeople is probably the most important aspect, right? It's less so than someone getting to church on time, right? As people living is probably most important. And then second, oh, and just along those lines, I think you heard from my husband who was hit by a car at the access point at the new construction site off the bridge while he was walking our children home from school just a couple of weeks ago. And so the safety is really important. And then the other piece is that as an environmental data scientist and someone who's concerned about the climate change, I think it's really important that we also not think about how we can get more people in their cars through these corridors, but how we can once again encourage people to not be, right? And so I think those would be my two highest priorities as a mom is looking forward to the future for her kids.
I do echo like we're gonna always have push-pull with like getting traffic through and slowing it down. I'm always for slowing it down, that's me. But the one thing I was gonna ask that you guys might know that I don't know are once the bridge over the still water is remade, will there be rules about like truck traffic and stuff not coming through downtown? Is that something that can be done? Is that something that's already there and they've just had to go through here because that bridge only allowed certain amount of tonnage? Like, can that be flipped where that becomes like the business corridor where the semi trucks, it's not as bad as it was when the mill was open in Old Town, but when the mill was open, we had huge trucks just going by, you know, every hour or more, semi trucks with huge things. So what I'm asking is, do you know whether we can push that traffic to Stillwater or is that being like not my backyard, my anonymity?
So
When
it's a conversation that I think MaineDOT, we are always happy to explore opportunities and that we serve. I am not authorized to make any commitments or obligations on behalf of the department or the state. It's really just a matter of having that conversation. Realize though that is State Route 2. That is a mobility priority corridor. You know, there are things that I think you have to be willing to have some compromise on. And, you know, I understand that this is a community. There are lots of communities in the state of Maine that have logging trucks that go through them where we do accomplish traffic calming and where we do accomplish pedestrian safety, bicycle safety, and improve mobility options for all users without giving up and or restricting. This is about improving transportation options for all modalities and all mobilities. So yes, we are going to look at how we can mitigate non-compliance with posted speed limit and how we can, you know, help the police department be able to focus on other things and improve safety so that everyone is safe and it's efficient. But at the same time, we have to, like Claire said, find that balance, and that's what this process is about.
Thank you for clarifying. I just wanted to know. Thanks for clarifying.
Route 2 is a federally marked truck route. It's the freight route. I've been staring at it for the last week, trying to do scoring. So yeah, I don't think you can remove the trucks. It's federally marked as being a truck route.
So is it owned by, I didn't know who owns
State.
it, owned by the state?
Yeah, the other ones, feeders are village, right?
Okay, so which is the issue that the state wants it to be a federal?
Yeah, it's a US state route, so it's owned, it's federally controlled and state maintained.
Yeah.
So it's my understanding that Lori Osher, Mayo Street, it's my understanding that there's a paper plan, meaning on paper, there's a plan to make a bike walking pedestrian trail, much like the bike trail at the university, that's parallel to Route 2, that runs along the it's like Spencer Street and the streets that are on the non-river side of Orono. And when I was on the council, there was discussion that it was made wide enough that cars could get there too, that it could also be a default route if there was some blockage of Route 2. But that's an expensive proposition to take something that is in the mind and maybe on paper. There could be a pedestrian and bicycle trail, but it certainly would be safe for all of the kids and people who live on that side of Main Street to get to the schools and to downtown. And much like the bike path becomes a destination itself when you have a nice trail that's not beside a road. So is there any way, because this federal or state highway that's gonna get federal support goes right through our downtown and prohibits us from having quieter streets in the way that you would if it was not a state road? Is there any way that the financing can also help support the town to make that pedestrian pathway developed?
I think you could consider other grant opportunities, and I think you do have a strong case to make for other funding sources, so long as it was ADA compliant and met all standards for accessibility. I think one thing to consider when going through the Village Partnership Initiative process is this is a very robust and comprehensive, like we said, and very high optic planning program that once you've committed to it and you're doing it, I think it provides a lot of gravity to your community and accessing other sources of funding and really demonstrating that your community is committed to the values of improving safety and efficiency of all modalities. Yes.
Okay, I'm Stacey Newman. I live on 124 Main Street, and our house is one of the big old historic homes, and we put a lot of effort and money into the beautification of our front driveway, and we have 2 access points so that we no longer had to try to back out onto Main Street in order to access either way of traffic. And really what I mean, I love the idea of safety, and especially because Westwood is right across from our house and our kids walk to school and my son has almost been hit, but I've literally seen Officer Lesky like this close from being hit at that crosswalk. So I definitely feel like crosswalks and raised or something. But one of the things is that, and maybe I missed it, but there hasn't been any talk about adding stoplights. And I'm not really promoting that as a plan. I like speed bumps better than stoplights. I don't really want a stoplight in front of our house. But that Westwood traffic with the high school at the start of school, and then obviously the morning traffic, and then there's that afternoon traffic time can get be problematic for then obviously pedestrians, bikers, and then walkers. So, but the other piece is really that streetscaping aspect of it. The historical corridor of Main Street, and I really would love to see it continue to be a historical corridor of Main Street, and it is a state highway, but I would hate to see it move more towards highway and less towards town. And I would love to see it be town, so more green space, more, when we're talking about a bike lane that might have a separation, if we could make it a separation that isn't, big concrete barriers, but is something that is, more nature and beautiful.
Go ahead.
Hi, Payson Welch, 23 College Ave. I have the property that's right behind Murray's on the corner of College and Park. And I just wanted to second that I've seen people on College Ave going very fast, faster than 45 miles per hour, up to 70, maybe 90, to be honest. That's on, it's on the rare occasion, but definitely we need more enforcement there. I certainly want to say yes to bicycle lanes, yes to a green space. And if we take it into account all the comments that have been made here tonight, it seems like, what a lot of people in the town are saying is that we want more of a town feeling, less traffic, a little safer. I grew up in a small town. I've also lived in cities. The small town I grew up in is Calais and has it has the sixth busiest border bridge in the nation, about half the size of Orono. The way that they regulated that is that they had multiple bridge crossings and multiple ways to get to those crossings. And that's kind of what I think Nancy was saying earlier, is that like, if we do some analysis on where all the traffic is coming from, it might not be a Route 2 problem, it might be an access issue. Maybe what we do, just hypothetically, we say hypothetically, the traffic is mostly University. You know, maybe we do a connector from 95 straight onto the University. And again, just throwing that out there, that's a big project, big statement, but you know, I think that that might be another way to look at that. And my final comment, I'm going to mention that I'm the president of the Orono Residential Community Association. It's a nonprofit, essentially a watchdog that will that's looking at the site plan review boards to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So on one of the last projects, and just for context, this is about process regarding public comments and what the town has done with them. I just wanted to bring this up. So the site planner, or the town planner published a report that said that there was significant discussion regarding traffic for the last major project on 117. And she added in all the minutes and some videos, and I reviewed all those. The summary of that is that a lot of the comments were about traffic, which is definitely what we're talking about today. During the planning process, I got to the town council and they kicked that over to the old town planner, who is Kyle Drexler. And Kyle said, well, we're going to deal with that at the site plan review. By the time these projects get to the site plan review, there's no opportunity to deal with them. So, you know, I think just in general, and I've spoken about this with a few of the town council members, but just in general, I want to encourage the town council to not pass the buck off to the town planner and dig into the details. I want to encourage Sebago Technics to really think outside the box here. And I want to encourage the town planner to present a more fact-based narrative. And as far as the fact-based narrative, one other thing I want to mention is that some of the applicants that have been, what I found through a couple different site plan reviews is that applicants are sending in what I'm calling magic numbers. So they're not proving what they're saying, you know, is happening. And I've asked for proof on that. It's hard to turn that up. So as we gather this data and go through this project, I would like to see more factual information presented than normal. So just some feedback really, as far as like how to improve that process.
I just have a question. How long does from this point to the point of completion, how long does this process typically take? What are we talking about? I mean, I know that's hard to say because it's funding and, you know, but I just, is it 10 years? Is it 5 years? Is it a year? I mean,
Which are you asking, how long is this process gonna take, or how long from when this process ends would it get built?
yeah,
Okay.
I guess, well, I mean, you know.
That's two different answers.
So based on precedent, what we've done in the past, this process is going to be about a year long. And once this process has completed and we have a conceptual level of renderings ready, it's met all that, it's gone through the internal review, we'll review it internally at DOT. And the public, you know, there'll probably be a last final town meeting and the public says, yeah, we like this. The next phase is we will seek to partner with the municipality on a 50-50 match for their preliminary engineering. And that is about 6 months to a year. When that completes, so long as we're within the window of ability to apply for the RAISE grant, we'll seek, you know, we'll ask the municipality, are you ready to commit the rest of the funding towards implementing? Ideally, when this starts, it's 3 to 5 years. So we're about 6 to 7 months in. So I'd hope that, and like I said, this is all really contingent on what goes on a national, regional, and then local. I can't give you like a magic 8 ball to say this is a 100% sure thing. However, based on the trends where things are going, the bipartisan infrastructure law, it has never been a better time for municipalities to go through this process because rural Maine is really in the spotlight right now. And there are a lot of policymakers, both at a local, a state, and a national level that are really interested in making investments in improving the quality of life and safety of rural Maine. Orono is still a rural Maine. Callis is still a rural Maine patient. This is all places that have, I think, a unique opportunity. This is a once in a generation opportunity to make these investments. So we're also working against the clock of bipartisan infrastructure law is a 5-year window. We've got really X amount of time left to make some commitments in partnership. But as we reach those decision points, that's what this process is. And Claire will be really the one ushering and helping it through. I'm just talking.
John. Hi, I'm John Jemison. I just wanted to both compliment you. I went back when I heard of the rumors about the possible roundabout up at College Avenue. I went back through all of the data and looked at what the problem intersections were that you guys have on your website. And I compliment you. One of the biggest problem sites was the Rangeley Road, where you guys put a roundabout in there. Great job. That solved that problem. The other bigger problem was over at Forest and Stillwater. You guys put a rotary in there. That seems to have corrected that problem. But over the 8 years that I looked back, the College Avenue 3-way there has never hit your top list. North Main Street, however, did, where it comes into College Avenue. That's been on your list more than a couple of times. So I foresee that that's going to be a bigger problem now that Tyler Technology is going to bring in 75 cars every day into the town. So I don't know what y'all want to do about that. I know Sarah's brought this up too. You probably have to maybe you just make it right turn only. But that's a bigger problem than the 3-way intersection of the street. So thank you for that. Thank you for all your really great ideas about making it safer to walk around, because we walk a lot and it is hard. You can stand right in the road and go. So thank you. It's true.
Thanks. I'm Dan Barrett, I live at Page Place, and I really appreciate everyone being here tonight and all the work that staff did to make this accessible to Orono residents. I've got several comments on social media from people who aren't able to be here, so I'm going to start spamming the email address. I think that probably feels like the right way to get those comments in, but everything from where we could use stoplights to retaining walls along property owners along the historic Main Street properties. But those will come into email. I wanted to ask, we talk about, I guess I'd ask the taxpayers in the room to maybe cover their ears, but especially you, Sarah. But when you talk about dream big, and sorry the skateboard thing didn't get some traction, but when you talk about dreaming big, I mean, does the village piece of this encompass what we have in terms of like from the library, Pine Street, the library, to Mill Street and the shops we have there, to some of those conversations about green space, but also things, fixed, the Forest Avenue, Bennett intersection, things like that. Is that part? How big is that corridor that we're talking about?
So you bring up a very good point, and it's very salient. We do have a defined scope right now for the study. And what I would say though is as the process goes on, we say that anything that has a logical nexus of a 5 to 10 minute walking distance to the state system could be considered as eligible for investments in the transportation system. I do have a project where there is a town that has a very, long overdue for some attention and care to pedestrian safety and their facilities, as well as on a conceptual level. we can consider some improvements to community spaces, so long as we can demonstrate that it has a transportation need to improve safety and accessibility for people using the system. So there is some things that this is in many ways a placemaking effort. We are here to respect the look, feel, and character of Orono, of historic Orono. When I say it goes through an environmental review, that also does mean compliance and looking at historic properties and historic landmarks. And because we are dealing with federal law, we are the Department of Transportation. We deal with regulations, law, policy, and data as our guiding principles for almost everything. So anything that we get involved with is very thorough, and that's what this process is really about, is making sure that we are complying with regulations, meeting the requirements for actually getting the funding. Our goal for doing this isn't just to be planning for the sake of planning's sake. We want to get this stuff built. So we are going to make sure that it's very thorough and compliant with all of federal and state regulations.
One more plug for another meeting around safety in the Department of Transportation. I understand the staff has arranged for department to come back to our council meeting on March 11th with CSX, the owner of the rail line. There've been some questions and concerns about that element of safety and what it means for our community for the training. So just if you have a concern or interest, we'll certainly publicize that as we topic for people to come and learn about what's possible and what's going on. Thank you.
That's go ahead. Me? I'm Lori Lomler and I live on Westwood Drive. And since you said that the scope is a little bit broader than just Route 2, if it's okay, I would just bring up a point about Westwood and safety for pedestrians on Westwood, but stop me if I'm out of line. Okay. The sidewalk disappears into a ditch and runs into the road. And there's no division between the sidewalk and the driving place. So children and adults are all in extreme danger. It's
Also
terrifying
really
to
narrow.
drive there. It's very narrow and there is no noticeable posting of the speed limit or anything that there are signs, but when you're turning that corner, it is so much to take in. It's hard to see where the turn is. I live there and I've lived there for 2 years and I miss it frequently. At night, I drive by it often. And it's so much when you're turning the corner onto Westwood. I think that I can understand how people get swept up in trying to navigate the turn and not hit anyone. And there's some trees that need to be trimmed that hang over from the property on the corner. And then the sidewalk just disappears and then there's a drainage issue. And so there's a big pool of water that turns into ice. There's just a lot of opportunity for safety improvement. And there are a lot of kids and adults that walk on that road often. And Willis has lots of ideas.
Just like to double down on that and what Ben said about continuity of corridors. So I think if we think about where people travel to and from, Westwood is the route that any kid, well, not every single one, someone leaving ASA will go a different direction, but any kid at the high school or middle school is probably gonna go out of Westwood. And so we can make improvements piecemeal, but if we don't have that continuity for these paths that people actually travel on, then feel like we're gonna spend a bunch of money and feel like we didn't really meet our goals. So but yeah, there's a host of issues with Westwood, as there are with plenty of other streets, but that one I think in particular, we watch, you know, the amount of traffic and the number of kids that do walk that street is significant. And it's a straightaway, just like Route 2 is, and it's just inevitable when people see a straightaway, they go faster. And I don't want the road to swerve into my yard. That's not what I'm saying, but like there needs to be traffic calming there, or the sense that you're just gonna get a ticket like you do in DC. But I've never seen a cop on Westwood.
Yeah, I've never ever seen anyone pulled over or.
Thank you. Gwen?
Yeah, my name's Paul Schrager. My family and I have lived on Hamlin Street since 1989, and we're very familiar with that intersection between Hamlin and Main Street. Someone mentioned that there are no crosswalks from Kelly Road to downtown, which is, I think, essentially true. But not only are there no crosswalks, there are no speed limit signs. The first speed limit sign is somewhere past the convenience store heading south. I mean, if you're coming up, and there are no more, let's say 25 miles an hour until maybe downtown. And there's no I think one theme that's been going around the room tonight, and this is not traffic calming, this is law enforcement. There is very little sign that Orono is enforcing its speed laws. Meaning that this is a completely dangerous town. I'm a bike rider. I'm a senior citizen. I still ride my bike, but I ride it on the sidewalk. I know that I can stop my bike and avoid hitting a pedestrian, but I don't want to ride in the street in the quote unquote bike lanes, which end in ditches or disappear into traffic. Some of these things don't require 20-year plans. They require, in Winterport, they have a sign that says entering village area, speed limit 25 with flashing yellow light. Village area is exactly what we're entering here in Orono. This is a village area, and people have to abide by the rules of a village. This is what we are. So good luck. I participated in the pedestrian study 2-3 years ago, and specifically pointed out the problem there with the left turn by the bank. Nothing happened. Zero. It's still a dangerous intersection. Why are we asked to come as a public and participate in these processes, and it disappears into nowhere? So, this is my personal history, and this is my personal statement on this.
Thank you.
I'm Dave Griffin. I live at 175 Bennett, and I think there's been some really good comments made here. And some are fairly simple. And I guess my question is, can we do this in phases? The sidewalk, the issue with safety on Main Street. Then there's been several comments made, how can we correct the problem? We talked about the sidewalk or the crosswalk from the credit union over to Mill Street. And I know that's a dangerous sidewalk. We've got the village sign request, like Winterport has with the blinking light. There's lots of things that can be done in phases that can lead toward a more safe village. And my question is, can you look at that instead of a 5-year plan that's all going to be presented and then decided on? Can we do these things in phases so we can see some action of all these good recommendations? My frustration is that we've had these committees. Years and years have gone by. This whole thing about safety on Main Street has been around for, quite frankly, half my lifetime. And I haven't seen very much action. Certainly, there's always been the rotaries and all that sort of thing, but downtown here, there's really not been much action taken for as big as the problem is. So my question to you folks is, can this be considered in phases and not be saying, we're going to be doing this study for the next 6 months of the year, and then the DOT, and then the presentation 5 years from now. I think we need to have some action taken that we can see some things being done a lot sooner than 5 years.
I'll just comment on that. It all comes down to funding, right? So this program here is based on a major project that has matching funds that goes through something. So which is not a phased approach. What you're asking about is, are there other ways that we can calm that before? And that would come back to having conversations with the town council, with folks about what we can do in the short term to be able to fix those problems. And certainly I think those are questions that we can ask the council to move forward. As far as this project is concerned, it is not financed phased. You know what I mean? That's not what this program is about, and it's a larger, much bigger impact. And so it's kind of like two different things. And I understand what you're saying, and I know that there have been many of these conversations before, and I can understand how that would be very frustrating. And I think part of this has come down to funding, right? Is when all these plans have been made, we don't have the funding to actually put them into place. So I think that's the balance that we have to keep as a municipality, but also in this process, in this project, that's not a possibility with that. But certainly, I think some of these things we can talk about, are there ways that we can implement them in the short term before this project gets all the way through?
I would also say that the 5 years that we were tossing out is not when the document will be handed, it would be when the money, that if we get a raise grant, when it would be built. The completion of the multi-$100 million thing that would go from Kelly Road to the city, to the town boundary. So the things, several of the things that have been mentioned here in the downtown area, I don't want to speak for Mitch, but that's, if it's not a road construction, if we're not just changing the road, it's a different. That 5-year thing is more about we're changing the roadway bit. I think it's a little bit. We're talking about different things at different points, I guess. I'm trying not to step on DOT's toes here.
Oh, prior to bipartisan infrastructure law, we really just did not have the funding mechanisms or ability to access the level of capital required to make these types of investments. I'll be pretty blunt with you. I'm from Calais too. Know that kid. We grew up together. You know, I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would have finished my degree in landscape architecture and I'd be here working with Claire and these teams to be able to say there's a really good chance that we can make once in a generation investments in the transportation infrastructure of rural Maine. And I cover regions 4 and 5. I'm all a yeehaw weehaw, you know, up there in the county, all over the place. And this is a very popular program. And because of, you know, our current seniority within Senate, it's really likely, I mean, I'm not here also to be like a hope salesman. I don't want to be, you know, my job, actually, our job is like lowered expectation, mitigating reality, to be honest. And I wouldn't be here with Claire and BACTS to be trying to take people on like a wild chase after pipe dreams. But we've done this at DOT. It is complicated, but it is highly doable. And I think, you know, there's a lot of interest in the community based on this meeting in really making those investments. And this is right now the best mechanism that we have in the state to deliver that type of infrastructure for future generations. If I had something that was lower cost, I would definitely do it. But this is a way for the municipality, for every $1 that the municipality invests, I will bring $9 other. And we are talking about projects that, you know, we haven't really gotten into what the concepts are, but you know, if I'm, you know, shooting from the hip, this could be like a $10 to $15 million total project budget cost that, you know, I know people think that at DOT, we've just got a ton of money to throw. We actually, our commissioner describes it as MacGyvering it. We really do operate on very thin margins. And we set out a work plan and we really do our best to stick with it because in many ways, our job is to try and find ways to save taxpayers of the state of Maine money. And that's what this program is really about, is trying to deliver really amazing infrastructure changes and transformations for communities at the lowest cost possible directly to the municipal taxpayer and the state taxpayer. And that's what this program does.
I have just one follow-up question. I'm going to just use a quick example. Say as a town, it comes to the highest priority is, say, the sidewalk from the credit union across the mill. That's the highest priority, or the problem with West Virginia, which I know about that problem. Are those problems such that they have to involve DOT?
That is a state system road, so yes, any interventions and changes would be coordinated with DOT and the MPO.
Okay, so DOT needs to be involved with the solution, although you said that we need to go back to town council on some of these issues. What I'm hearing?
If you want to prioritize certain projects to expedite it through the work plan process to deliver within a timeframe, yes, there is we partner with municipalities.
Okay, one more question, that is the timeline, if we just say hypothetically, the crosswalk across Main Street, from CC over to Middle Street, would you just, as an example, we say that's a priority, we need DOTs involved. What type of time frame are we talking about to get that problem solved? It's been identified as a high priority. Can you just give us a timeline of how long it takes to get that problem solved?
That one I actually can't give you a definitive answer on. We are a pretty siloed department and we're within the Bureau of Planning. I think that might go to multimodal. So if there is questions that you have about a particular crosswalk or intersection, please feel free to reach out and connect you with the various persons who would be involved with that. But our role is really long-range scoping for transportation projects. And I don't think that's really under the purview of what we have within this study or necessarily in DOT, it's really beneficial for us to stay in our lane. That one kind of goes out of the lane of travel for our role.
I just want to follow up with these two gentlemen we're speaking about. So, you know, as far as like seeing some action now, going back to what I was saying about providing more factual based narratives and more data related to what's actually happening. You know, I think it would be helpful for us. I think your comment, sir, was that, you know, there's been comments that have been made for a long time and we don't see the end result. We don't see any action on that, right? So if we collect data on the before and the after, you know, I'm sure we could understand that they have to work within their 5-year, you know, hypothetically 5-year plan. But if we could kind of see some of that data, like here's the other situation, we're gonna make these changes and then we do a measurement after. At least we can kind of see, you know, the efficacy of those changes. And then one other comment about bike lanes is that I was actually living in Portland when they put in a bunch of bike lanes and they're trying to reduce traffic. A lot of what we're talking about now, I don't know any hard numbers on that, but the word on the street was that it was a mess. And yet, because now you have bicyclists and nobody really used them. And I knew quite a few people that got hit. I know one guy that was in the ICU and he can't work anymore. So, you know, going back to that idea of enforcement, you know, just putting in bike lanes might not be enough. And so there's a couple different issues that might need to be tackled differently. So just want to throw that out there that I am in favor of bike lanes, but we seems like we have some separate issues to deal with as well, which might impact their usability.
So I'll take one more. We're kind of at the end, so I just wanted to, I don't want to leave anybody, but go right ahead.
Well, I just wanted to put it out there because the beginning said like, we're not supposed to edit what we do and we're supposed to think big and put every idea out. And I realized as people are talking about pinch points and how to get, you know, bike lanes that go everywhere that don't dead end places, the bridge seems to me like the obvious pinch point that gets very, very narrow. And I don't know how we widen a bridge. That's a very big thing, but I do know people have sent in emails recently saying, what do we do about that? Do we build a bike and pedestrian bridge next to it? Do we contract with the railroad to use part of that? But I just want to throw it out there because I've had a few emails saying, this is a pinch point. What do we do about that? Can we get a bike or pedestrian option on a bridge? So thanks.
Okay, well, I thank everyone for coming and all the comments. Obviously, Nikki and her team are gonna kind of compile things to put together some ideas along with all the other studies and the data that they've collected to come up with, you know, some ideas for stuff moving forward. And then we would come back, bring that back to you folks, put it out in the public to look at it and get some more feedback around, probably around June. We'll keep this moving as quick as we can and trying to meet the goals of meeting the deadlines that we need to so that we can follow through with this. So really appreciate you coming once again. There are some cards if you want to write something down that you weren't able to say on them, that's great. And the email address, you can use it. Excuse me? Yep.
Welcome.
So
Thanks for
I
putting out.
don't have it. We had a discussion.
I grew up